On the show today, we have guest Molly Arbuthnott, a teacher, author, editor, and academic from Scotland. She is passionate about the promotion of children's literature and has published 18 award-winning picture books. Molly, a former teacher, transitioned her career to children's literature in 2019, completing a master's in children's literature at Glasgow University. Molly crafts narratives based on people that have been important in her life and that are simultaneously honest and gentle, teaching children about empathy, teamwork, and moral courage. Each book collaborates with a charity which is associated with the theme of the book in some way. Get ready for a great episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-created curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Molly, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here. I am really excited, particularly as this is airing in a kind of mini-series directed towards both teachers and families, thinking about families supporting kids as they read, whether they're reading picture books, whether they're, chapter books, whatever they're reading. I'm really excited about your background as an educator and involvement with books. Specifically, that's kind of what is on my mind as we enter this conversation. Is there anything on your mind as we enter the conversation that you want people to be aware of kind of as we continue?
Not off the top of my head. I'm just really happy to be here chatting about the joy of picture books.
Awesome. All right. Well, so I think my first question is the first question I have for every guest, which is really in line with freedom dreaming, which Dr. Bettina Love describes as dreams grounded in the critique of injustice. What is that dream that you hold, whether it be for education, for kids' reading lives, for picture books broadly? Like, what's that dream for you?
The dream, I guess, well, all of my books are kind of about the underdog who kind of comes out on top. So I guess it's the dream of self-belief, the American dream. And also the dream of a picture book being not just a children's book, but a book for that anyone reading it can get something out of. I think it's really important for adults to start embracing more picture books.
I love that. And I can say, actually, just yesterday, colleagues of mine, all educators, were in this group chat around picture books, and like we're reading it for ourselves, not even for the kids.
Oh, amazing. Well, it's great. I mean, it's not, I think it's really the fault of the way this is going off piece a bit, but it's the fault of, well, not the fault, but it's the way that we teach reading, where the picture book's kind of the bottom rung of the ladder, and you start with the picture book and then you progress on to the chapter book or the bigger book. But really, the picture book should be top of the ladder because it is the one that most people can get something out of.
I love that. And as a former high school teacher who used picture books in our class, I can say the kids are really into it too.
Yeah. It uses a particular part of the brain, and it's a really easy way for, particularly with parents having less time in modern life to read with their kids or having other priorities. It's a really easy way to engage with a child. Just by looking at, because it gives the kid it's a two-way interaction rather than it just being from one person. So it's a really fun bonding experience beyond just being a story.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you've already kind of shared a bunch of mindsets or mindset shifts for people. I think that's brilliant. Are there any other things that people should be aware of or have a particular mindset around as they, particularly families I'm thinking of, that are reading with their kids as they encounter this situation where they're opening a picture book together? Is there a particular thing they should have in mind as they read?
To not dumb it down. So I very much have death in my books. I've got all sorts of concepts that are quite deep. And I think that it's a great disservice to a kid if we kind of gloss over things that they potentially or definitely will experience at some stage in life. I mean, it's in an animal form, all my books, so it's kind of a degree of separation. It's not as in your face as it would be otherwise, but I think they're still really important topics, and to not, if the kid raises it, to not just brush over it, but to actually take the time to answer their questions and sort of give them a sense of understanding, because then they'll be much more confident in it as a subject if they kind of know.
Oh, I love that. And so is there a particular either scene or storyline from one of your books that you want to give us an example of? Like, here's something that happens in the book. Here's how a child might respond. Here's how you as a family member might respond or engage in that conversation.
Sure. Well, I mean, there are two quite deep stories off the top of my head, I'd say. I've written, for anyone sort of zoning into my books for the first time, there are 18 different picture books about different animals. They all deal with different concepts, different stories, different locations, different adventures. But the one that springs to mind, Angus the Robin, is about there's a house and there's an accident essentially that happens, and suddenly I don't expressly say what's there, but I say that there are blue flashing lights, and then it's up to the reader to interpret that as they choose. But then, so that kind of leaves it fairly open to chat and discussion about what the blue flashing lights could be, where they could be going, what they could be taking, and that kind of thing. And then in Athena the cheetah, there is actually a physical death. There are two brothers. One of them, I lived in Kenya for a while, so that's what inspired that story. One of them, one of the boys gets his foot. There's a crocodile in the river, and the crocodile gets one of the brothers. So again, obviously, chances are most readers will not be beside crocodile-infested lakes when they're reading the story. So it's not a literal kind of discussion, but it's a discussion about importance of staying together and what happens if someone you really care about has an accident. And accidents do happen all the time. And so you can maybe sort of switch it into being an accident that they might relate to or understand, and how you can deal with it and understand. In the story, I'm not going to give the story away completely, but the boy who's left, he goes mute. And so then as well, that could lead to the discussion with parents as to why he doesn't talk, because I mean the kids might come across, there are kids who you find don't talk for whatever reason, and so then that can lead into discussion about that and why they might not be talking and what you can do to help and what they might be feeling inside and all that kind of thing.
Thank you for sharing those examples. And just, I love the broadening of how, yes, we read this thing, but then what does that mean for these other maybe related concepts or related applications in your life? I think that's a really nice takeaway for families and teachers to be able to facilitate conversation and sense making. I know also that you are really interested. I think you use the phrase children as gatekeepers. And so can you talk about a little bit about how like we as adults can support children in, you know, making choices around books, or what that kind of means for you in that phrase you use?
Yeah, well, it's a really important concept for me, because very often as a writer of, I mean, inevitably as a writer of children's books, you are kind of having to appeal to two markets, because it's the kids who will be reading it, but it's the parents who will be buying it. So it's quite a tricky kind of balance, but it really essentially is, you have to be gearing it at what the kids need, and they're the ones kind of driving the decisions. It was really because I've started applying for competitions for my books a bit more constructively this year. It's something that I've never done before, and I kind of was figuring that, well, great. But again, it's the adults kind of driving the demand and driving the books that you see on the shelves and driving what comes out on top and driving what wins. And all of these algorithms and things are generated by the people who work rather than by the kids themselves. And how you can shift that. I'm going off to Bologna Book Fair next week. And again, that's a fair for kids' books, but it's very much the adults who are there. And so as a kid, I mean, they have very little power inevitably of what they pick and choose to do with their lives, but how to address that kind of power imbalance and to give the kids a bit more say over what it is that they want to read and they want to find out and they want to learn. Because even in a curriculum in school, I mean, you're very much told what to do and think. I mean, up until about 6 or 7, and then it kind of, there's that shift of when you're supposed to be educated. And I think in some ways it kind of de-educates because you kind of lose your independence of thought in some ways. Anyway, sorry, I feel I'm segueing a bit.
I mean, that's very connected to all the things we talk about on this podcast, so you're in good company.
But I think I don't know what the answer is personally, but I feel that there needs to be a way that kids can articulate what it is they want to know. But then in some ways as well, they're figuring out the world, and so they maybe don't know. I mean, it's in some ways it's a responsibility as an adult who kind of knows a bit more to articulate what it is you think they want to hear. I mean, an example at the moment from me, from my perspective, is I'm having to write. Well, I've been asked to write a story about 2 guinea pigs, Mocha and Latte, who are in this school, Greenside Primary School, and I'm having to sort of direct it from the guinea pig's perspective. And try and kind of articulate how, I mean, through a guinea pig, how a child would kind of see the world. And I mean, you're much more, I think children are very much better at kind of living in the present than an adult, because as an adult, you kind of, not intentionally and not always, but you kind of put all these different layers on top of who you are, just in the nature of how your life kind of, well, not always, but how sometimes your life pans out, that you have layers of parents getting older, layers of properties, layers of travel, layers of work, layers of relationships, layers of, you get all these many, many more layers, and that kind of can, it can just cover up kind of your a way to sort of be more in the present and actively appreciating what's around you, because you're covered up with all these layers all the time. So to kind of get into the child's mindset, you have to sort of take all those layers away and be very much aware of your surroundings, aware of what you hear, aware of what you see, and aware of how you interpret it, because that's a nice thing about books as well, that no one can say what you're seeing or thinking or feeling is right or wrong, because it's just your interpretation, and your interpretation could be the same as the person next to you, or it could be completely different. That's kind of the joy of being a independent human being. And so I guess as a writer, you can never satisfy everybody, because everybody's views and opinions are different, but you can make it try to have resonance with as many different people as you can.
I love that too, from the perspective of either a teacher or a family member who is working with kids and reading and having that experience of engaging in a picture book with kids, that there is no wrong answer. I think a lot of times in schools, right, it's right or wrong. It's like, it's 2 and 2 is 4. That is, anything else is incorrect. Like, there is a little bit of shyness or fear from students sometimes in speaking up and sharing what their thoughts are, because they are fearful that they will be wrong, right? And so I love this idea of art, even more broadly beyond picture books, but picture books as a specific representation of art being one of interpretation and one of connection. And I also am very much thinking about like civics and civic conversations are, I think, particularly challenging in the States right now, and thinking about how this is a beautiful, less emotionally charged, perhaps, example of how we can talk across different interpretations of a situation around picture books, and like what a great practice opportunity to have different kids read the same book and have a different experience with it and be able to share that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of a safe space for articulating and learning actually to have your own opinion, which is really important, and that it's all right to think something different from the person next to you.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode, a course by our guest called Animal Story Kit. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/blog/261. Now back to the show.
I'm also envisioning, in high school, we do a lot of like literature circles around a theme, but it sounds like maybe teachers could also use, because you have such a wide range of books, right, that are maybe on particular topics. It might be, okay, we're going to think about this topic of accidents, for example, as you mentioned earlier, and invite students to choose maybe one book that speaks to them and like read and engage in that book, and then be able to have conversations with kids who read different books. Do you think that would?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's as well the joy of. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you can take a broad subject. Generally, in schools, I would say anyway, that's kind of how the curriculum's sort of centered around a broad subject, and then you find books that kind of relate to that in different ways. And even, I mean, it doesn't for discussions like that. It doesn't necessarily need to be just picture books. I mean, there are wonderful picture books that relate to all sorts of different subjects, but you can get a bit out of a chapter book too. I mean, I feel like the whole thing is really to encourage creativity and encourage imagination, and so any way that can do that is really good. I mean, my books, they're not super woke. They're kind of sticking to traditional values, which just because that's kind of how I am. And for me, I kind of had to write about things I know rather than trying to make it something you don't know, because I feel like you fall short in that respect.
Certainly there are a lot of school districts who have, like in the United States anyways, like very much like legal pressures for different things they can and can't talk about. So I think that will be appreciated there. And I think there's also so much connection to, like you said, and the broadening span. Like people can have an entry point into whatever current event might be happening or whatever is happening identity-wise with them or their friends, to be able to enter into conversations and expand them beyond the book as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing as well, though, about an animal is that it's not irrespective of your stance on sort of who you are as a person. It again is a space where you can be anything, because it's why I choose animals, because they're not hidebound by the rules and regulations that you are as an adult, as a person, of having to sort of get up, go to work, go to school, come have lunch, go home. It gives you a lot more creative freedom. And with that, it means that then you can have the freedom of interpretation. But going back to the themes you were saying, one of them is I deal with climate change with David the Pizzly Bear. And that's about this bear who gets lost or goes out on an adventure and gets lost in an ice field, and then the ice melts, and then they have to swim back home in order to get home. So that can open up about. It's based on David Attenborough, so again that can lead to interpretation of him, and then also that ice fields, why they're melting, and what we can do to help and to sort of stop the climate crisis. But again, it has a happy ending, so it's kind of not all. It's showing that even though things might be going wrong in the world, you kind of work around it and you just make it a new concept of it. And then actually also Conrad the spider, that's a guitar playing spider, and that he loses his legs. He uses his legs as his guitar strings. Then he loses his guitar, and so he loses his legs. And it's about how you can go from great fame and fortune to being very poor, and how people, the community around you, kind of react and interpret that, because inevitably you I mean, you're always kind of influenced a little bit by what people think and feel, and how you can, and so then you can build resilience kind of up against that. And also, they end up in a crisp packet with a ladybird, because obviously a spider is much smaller than a human, so that becomes their home. And then that can lead into concepts that, well, you can just have an adventure kind of with a crisp packet, or in your wall, in your garden behind your house. You don't need to, that especially when you're a kid, or even when you're an adult as well, you can still have adventures without needing to travel to the other side of the world. I mean, it's all kind of in your mindset. So every day can be an adventure if you want it to be. It doesn't sort of have to be this great going on holiday that's the release. You can just make that be part of your day-to-day life. It's just a kind of different interpretation.
Yeah, like the expansiveness of how differently you could interpret that. Like my brain immediately was going to, the crisis of people being unhoused, and like, like you could look up all of that research as well. So I think, whatever your kid or kids, if you're in a class, right, are interested in, I think there's a lot of like follow-up research you could do, to your point about like climate change, and like who is this particular person that it's based off of, but also what's the information right now, and like how do we look at graphs over time. Like there's so many it's like a jumping off point into so many different areas, which is really cool.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, I hope so. I mean, I can't say I'm a massive environmental. Well, I don't, in that respect, I don't preach what I teach, in that I do still travel. I have to travel quite a lot for work. And so I do take planes, I do drive, I do things that probably aren't so good for the environment, but then I balance it out in other ways. I mean, we do still have to live.
Yeah, great points. Anything else you would like to tell families, educators, any advice that you have for engaging students and letting students lead the picture book conversations before we move to our final closing questions?
Just to keep it fun. I find, particularly with my work, I've always promised myself that if I ever stop enjoying what I'm doing, I'll change something. For me, I spend most of my time doing my books, doing my work, and so it's really important for me that I really enjoy what I do, and I feel very lucky that I've been able to find that, because a lot of people don't, and so I try and put joy into the books. So I'm hoping that the joy radiates out of the books, and then make it fun when you're sharing it. So I've got loads of costumes, I've got loads of resources that if anyone wants, I can very happily share, that bring each of the stories alive. And I love coming and reading the books, and to kind of just let your imagination go. So anything can really happen, because they're pretend animals, pretend places. Try and as well kind of think when you're reading it, try and kind of transform yourself into the animal that you're supposed to be being, and then it will give a lot more authentic interpretation.
That's great. Thank you for that advice. I'm imagining that, someone is preparing to read, perhaps for bedtime, a story after listening and engaging with this episode, and they're ready for that now. Is
Oh,
there
good. I hope so.
something that you have been, this is a fun question we like to ask all of our guests because they're all lifelong learners, something you have been learning about lately, either related to your work or just completely different?
Ah, gosh, that's quite a good question. Well, this school that I'm doing the guinea pig story about was designed by Goldfinger, like, James Bond Goldfinger. So I've been researching Goldfinger a fair bit recently. And also I'm learning the ukulele so that I can play it when I'm doing story events. So I've been learning a bit of music as well.
Wow, that is so fun. I love it. And so you mentioned you have things, resources, in addition to your books, you have all of your books. Where can people go to get that information, to connect with you online? Is there a place?
Well, I've got my website, and you can send a message through that. I have all the books available through my website. I don't think I have the resources. I need to work on that. The trouble is the more books you do, I thought it would get way easier, but it gets so much harder. There's just so many things to suddenly think about. And so it kind of eats into time a bit. But yeah, so I would look on my website. They're available on Amazon as well, and all good wholesalers. And I'm coming actually to New York because you're in Boston, so not too far away. My publisher's in New Jersey. I do an annual book launch. And so I'm coming to New Jersey, and we're going to launch in September. And we hire a paddle boat and paddle around the Hudson River. And it's always very fun. So reach out to me for that if you'd be interested. And the more the merrier. And it's always just really nice to hear from people. And so do send me a message. Maybe you could send, if whenever I go and do events, I always ask the kids what their favorite animals are. And it kind of can help inspire. If they have a favorite animal, it might end up in a future subsequent book, perhaps.
That is awesome. Molly, thank you so much for your time and conversation today.
Oh, well, thank you. Gosh, it's gone in a flash, but it's been lots of fun.
If you're looking for support to help you talk to your child about history, current events, or other high emotion topics, we've got you. Families are now welcome to join EduBoost. Here's how it works. Your kid brings up a topic and you're not sure what to say next, or something happens in the world or in your kid's life and you want to talk to your kid about it, but you're unsure how to bring it up. Immediately, you send us a message on Slack telling us what's going on via text or audio message. Slack can be used on your phone as well as your computer, so you can totally message us from the grocery store checkout line or at 2 a.m. when the question's literally keeping you awake at night. You get a personalized response and any relevant resources within 24 hours from me or my awesome colleague, Cara Prenikoff. Visit lindsaybethlyons.com/families for more information on family coaching.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.